Locked On Hornets is back daily after the offseason. We got a few trade scenarios to discuss. Should the Hornets be interested in Julius Randle? And should the Hornets have been interested in Issac Okoro? Did they lose out on now somebody that signs back with the Cleveland Cavaliers? We'll get to all of that today on Locked On Hornets.
And this is what I'm telling you. It takes constipation. We've been waiting, and now everything's coming out at once.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Real quickly, want to tell you this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, still have some time. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I won't bring up the team that you don't have to watch in market by bringing NFL Sunday Ticket to your life. You can watch out-of-market games. I will refer to those as the team we don't speak of because we got a lot of angry comments in the YouTube section when we brought that team up. So know that that's fine. This will be your reprieve. We will move on. This is Doug Branson every day, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can find him on Twitter also at Doug Branson LOH. And I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Real quickly, we're back. I just want to tell the people we are back daily, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's not really an off season for us, but we get like kind of this tiny, couple breaks here and there, a 6-week long, 3 episode a week type of break, and that's no longer here. We're rolling. We're ready to go with the NBA season fast approaching.
And I'll say I don't like it. All of my takes get backed up. I get take constipation, and so us being back 5 days a week is just a sweet laxative that is coursing through my body right now. I've got all kinds of things to say.
Please be more descriptive. That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
we've got watching this show for me is a colonoscopy every day. So we've got some trade talk. I can't wait to get to that. I do want to say that we're not only back daily, but I just realized this, and coincidentally, I realized this while I was on the toilet this morning. We are not only back daily. Well, sometimes that's where your best thoughts come from. Some people think it's the shower. Some people think it's the shower. I think it's the king seat.
Can you take this out of the bathroom, please? Can you take this away from your butt, please? Goodness gracious. Let's go.
I was thinking about this. We're the longest running podcast in Charlotte Hornets history.
I was thinking a little bit about that too.
That's a fact. You cannot deny that. There will be a lot of speculation on today's show and throughout this season, but what I just dropped there is a fact. We have the longest running podcast in Charlotte Hornets history. I'm proud of that.
So, and congrats to you a little bit more so, just because I came in a little bit later, right? I was looking at I was doing the Facebook memory stuff. They were popping up. Then you click on see more memories, and my current cover photo on Facebook, which I don't even really get on, never post, but my cover photo is my first episode of Locked On Hornets back at the, I guess, what was it, Gittiber Studios, whatever those studios were. Mm-hmm. And it's 2018, late August of 2018 is with the first one. And so even there, like it's been a long time. We've been doing this for a while, and we're about ready to get going again.
And we ain't going nowhere.
We're not going anywhere, no matter how much you don't want to hear about
I might go to the bathroom, but other than that, we ain't going nowhere.
During the break, but right now, Doug will give us some trade talk here. So Eric Pincus of the Bleacher Report, he threw out an idea, Doug, that's been thrown out so many times now that we should just talk about it a little more seriously with how much it's being discussed. So Eric Pincus, Bleacher Report, speculates on a Julius Randle deal, possibly for the Charlotte Hornets. He says this, quote, "It's challenging to get a read on the Hornets with Jeff Peterson taking over in March. He paid $75 million to keep Bridges for 3 years. Was that a commitment? Or was Peterson trying to turn Bridges around in trade? Will the team continue to build slowly through the draft? Charlotte isn't known as a free agent destination. Would the chance to land an all-star like Julius Randle be a leap worth making?" Doug, I told you before we started recording, I think Julius Randle now is in this category of most talked about Hornets trade targets ever. Russell Westbrook, solidly in that category. Miles Turner, maybe the president of that topic of conversation. Except they've had legitimate reports about the Hornets possibly being interested, or with that the Hornets just being a team to absorb the salary, whatever. I don't know if there's been legitimate reports about the Hornets' interest in Julius Randle. It's just a team everybody throws out there over the last 3 years for Julius, trying to figure out where he could go that it might make sense. And here we are once again. What do you make of the pinkest piece on Bleacher Report?
Well, yes, I think that the Julius Randle discussion has been wafting over the Hornets sphere like a stale fart for a long time. And we've avoided, I did it again.
You can't help it.
We've avoided this conversation a lot. In fact, Locked On Knicks has approached us multiple times wanting us to do one of these crossover shows talking about a potential Julius Randle deal, like for a couple of years now, and we've avoided it. And I think
I did it one time. I did it one time. I turned it. No, yeah, but it's true. Like I did it one time. I turned it down. He was like trying to and giving me some good points as to why we should maybe accept it, but I didn't want it, Doug. I don't want it now.
Well, because if Locked On Knicks, if their team, the Knicks, have a multi-time All-Star on their roster, and yet that podcast that pays close attention to the Knicks is approaching us multiple times to discuss a trade, you have to start to wonder, like, what's that all about? And this whole conversation scares the bleep out of me because there are some things that make sense about it, which include the fact that he is a multi-time All-Star, that opportunities to acquire All-Stars, particularly for mid to small markets, don't come every day. And at his peak, he is a 25-10 player that is an absolute matchup difficulty for other teams. And that's the whole ball game in terms of making the playoffs and succeeding in the playoffs, actually winning playoff series, which the Hornets haven't done in 20-plus years. It's all about having one or more matchup difficulties, meaning the other team has to change the way they play defense to accommodate the fact that you have a monster on the offensive end that can get a bucket, multiple ways. The Hornets don't currently possess that on the roster right now. They have a few guys with the potential to become that. LaMelo Ball can become that. Brandon Miller can become that. I don't think Miles Bridges can become that anymore. But if you, as a franchise, if you have an opportunity to trade a couple of not all-stars for an all-star, you have to seriously consider that. But Walker, this also comes with some problems as well. Why were you scared about talking about this? Why did you not want this conversation with the Knicks when it comes to Julius Randle?
Well, a fascinating player, because I had this conversation with Locked On Knicks almost like it might have been 2 years ago. And that was after he was coming off of his first All-NBA selection. Doug, he's not a multi-time All-Star. He's a multi-time All-NBA player, which is wild to think about.
True.
Because you get 2 All-NBA selections in your career. That's some baller stuff. We got to talk about you with some serious respect at that point. He was coming off of his first All-NBA appearance. Locked On Knicks trying to sell him, trade him. This was before Jalen Brunson. This is before the eruption of talent, trying to get the Nova Knicks all together, right? So they're trying to figure out a way to trade him. I'm not really buying it. We get to the next season. Doug, it's a really disappointing year the following season for him. And then what happens the year after that? He gets All-NBA again. Not All-Star, All-NBA again. So there is some inconsistency to what you theoretically can expect from Julius Randle every single year. I just don't think this is the right time for the Hornets to go after that type of player, especially with them trying to build through the draft and get younger. You bring in Randle, you have to match salary. I don't know what that would look like. Maybe Miles Bridges is somebody that you're sending to the New York Knicks.
I think it would be Miles plus. Right. I think at that point you're looking at like $3 to $5 million to match. So there are a couple of names that you could throw in there, younger players that might entice them to do the deal without any pick compensation.
And would they even do it? Because if you're the Knicks, maybe you're just trying to move off of the money as much as you can, but you're trying to get back some picks in return as much as possible. So I don't know what the pick conversation is there between Charlotte and New York, but it doesn't seem like the right fit. It doesn't seem like this is the right time. He's going to be 30 in November, so essentially he'll be 30 years old for the rest of this season. this ain't for me. This is not the type of deal I want Jeff Peterson making as his first big swing.
Okay, I think we should take this into the next segment, and here's what I think we should talk about. One, why would the Knicks even consider moving what you just called multi-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA player? If they're trying to win, why would they theoretically move Julius Randle? And then talk more about what you just said there, why he doesn't fit. Because I have some thoughts on that too. I agree with you. I think the fit is, I wouldn't say like it's not a fit, but the fit, if you tried to make him fit, it would come at some serious cost, and I think we should talk about that.
All right, let's do it. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. More Julius Randle conversation, plus we'll get to Issac Okoro as well. Did the Hornets miss out on now the, I guess, who is still somebody that plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers? We'll get to that in just a moment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, but we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. Again, you don't have much time, but you still have a little bit of time. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. And again, we've talked about the importance of that here in Carolina. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, you agree with me? You're not really feeling a trade for Julius Randle either. Explain yourself. Why do you think that you would kind of have to force him to fit, and that might lead to some problems?
Well, it's a huge risk. And so here's where I want to start with why the Knicks would even be considering this. Because you look at his stats, and yes, like points per shot attempts, he's either like seriously below average or seriously above average. You're right. The inconsistency are there, but he's consistent in that he gets a ton of touches. I mean, he has been in the 96th to 97th percentile,
that's right.
top of
that's
the
right.
league in usage. And so then you question, like, if that's the case, why would the Knicks be moving on? And I think the answer is he's got a player option for next season. So they need to commit to him for the long term, or they've got to move on and try to get something in return. And so I think that they've made commitments to other players like Brunson and now Mikal Bridges. And so I think it seems like they're moving away from Julius Randle, who is someone that needs a lot of touches, that is a bit of a black hole when it comes to the basketball, right? The pass goes into Randle, and it's not too often that it comes back out. Good pass, not a bad passer, just doesn't, he's going to eat some possessions. And so that's where the risk comes in, because if you're the Hornets, getting Randle, if you get all NBA level Randle, that is a shortcut into some kind of postseason action, be it a play-in, or if other guys max out, then you're talking about possibly even, backside of the Eastern Conference playoffs. So it's a shortcut, but it comes at the cost, I think, of quickly developing Brandon Miller, right? I think that's the guy that's going to get most affected, the most touches taken away. If in this theoretical trade, Miles Bridges is the one that leaves, then, Brandon Miller, I think, suffers from the fact that you've got to find touches for Randle, and Randle's going to do a lot of the work himself. That's going to be difficult. And so it doesn't mean that it's going to be impossible for Brandon Miller to achieve what you want Brandon Miller to achieve. It's just going to take longer, because unless you work out some kind of extension with Randle as part of the deal, you're not even guaranteed to keep him. Like, he could opt out of his player option and then go out into the market after he gives Charlotte one good year.
So, yeah, on top of the age, you mentioned the usage. It's what I'm looking at as well. I mean, you're talking about a guy that has the basketball in his hands a lot. Now, the assist percentage is actually pretty good for Julius Randle. At the same time, do you want the basketball to be more in the hands of Randle, or shared between LaMelo first and foremost, and then Brandon Miller, who we're trying to groom into a guy that can be a star in the NBA, and then Miles Bridges kind of like being a better tertiary option than what Julius Randle would be, right? Because that's what I would want Julius to be if they're trading for him. And there's just no way that he would welcome that. Maybe second, with Brandon Miller still moving to that third option, but we don't want that. We want to see the second overall pick that was Rookie of the Month the last 3 months in the Eastern Conference that we feel like has some all-star / all-NBA potential, we want to give him the basketball a lot. And I think him being that second option with LaMelo at the helm right now is a perfect place for him. There are some things where he does fit pretty well. Really good rebounder. He's always been a tenacious rebounder in the NBA. That's something that I would welcome as a Hornets fan. But if you're theoretically getting rid of Miles Bridges, who also is a good rebounder, I would say not as good as Julius. But like for the most part, the gap, it's not a monster-sized gap that it might be between some of the other players. And so if you got rid of Miles to bring in Julius, you're getting an upgraded rebounder, but also, you're bringing in somebody that offensively just might not fit as well. I do like ball movement a lot. I value that a ton in an NBA offense. I just think it keeps the defense on their toes. I think it gives the defense indecision, trying to rotate. If you're swinging this, especially with LaMelo, I value that a lot more than having Randle, who, again, like I think he's actually kind of gotten rid of the black hole mantra as much, but it's still there to a certain degree, and that's why it's not terrible, Doug. It's just not quite right, especially for the situation the Hornets are in right now.
Yeah, and would that mantra return on a team where he's clearly the most gifted and experienced player on the roster? Whereas like in New York, there were a lot of guys to toss the rock to. He's, and Randle too doesn't make you better necessarily from three, which is somewhere they've got to improve. But you may sacrifice a few percentage points from like a Miles Bridges from three, but you're getting so much more from everywhere else on the floor offensively. So yeah, it's a lot of trade-offs. It's a huge risk because if you do move Miles, because Miles is you've got him under contract. You know what you have. He has a relationship with the player, so the fit is already, it's there in the sense that they know each other and they know how to play with one another. Where you've got to figure that out with Randle. But Randle, the upside for Randle is if he can recapture, if he gets over this injury that kept him out for half the season last year. Then the upside there, I think it's a shortcut to the playoffs, but it's a huge risk. It's the kind of risk though that Hornets teams of old used to make. Like trading for Anthony Mason was a huge risk, and it worked out. I mean, trading Mourning for Rice was a risk, and it worked out.
The only thing is
the kind of risk they used to take.
Yeah, I will say the only thing about those teams is that they almost were left with no choice because stars were out the door.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, if these guys are going to leave anyway, then let's go try to salvage some of this star power that we have by trading for the next available dude. So, with Mourning leaving, it's like, okay, he can either leave and we pout and cry, or we try to get something in return, and that's what they did. And that's why, I credit Bob Bass a million different times. I think he's one of the most underrated GMs of the 90s. What he did to keep this Hornets team afloat was pretty damn amazing with how many stars wanted to leave. And so this is the thing about Randle too. If we view this team as still constructing a product towards a future goal, and then you bring in somebody that's not on a bad contract right now, like Julius is making $30 million player option. He'll opt out because of all the money that's going up and up and up these days. So you're going for a 30-year-old on a 1-year rental where that's not a bad thing. You free up some money. Miles Bridges could be gone. But still, like the Miles Bridges contract, as I've said, even if I would have moved on in the first place, I'll tell you, it's a fair deal for talent, and it's a fair deal as far as being able to trade it and get something in return. So now if you trade Miles for Julius, like those are your assets, right? Like you turned in what could be future picks into a year of Julius Randle and then risk him leaving for us, maybe getting a 6 seed. That's where it just does not compute to a type of answer that I want.
And it probably makes you worse defensively, right? Depending on the package of players that goes out, it probably makes you worse defensively. So it might be a shortcut into the playoffs, but it's probably also a shortcut out of the playoffs very quickly. And so then you're tasking yourself with not only trying to convince Julius Randle to stay and either opt in or to a contract extension, which is, if you're convincing him to stay, then that you would think that contract extension is going to be massive for a player that is pretty old. That's going to be a difficult thing. So look, but all I'll say is that the allure of building through the draft and developing young players is something that this Hornets team has been pursuing for many, many, many years. And what has resulted from it? What do they have to show for it? The answer is not very much. At some point, whether it be Randle or another player, at some point, you've got to find some kind of veteran that has that kind of experience, that has that kind of record to come in and enhance your team. I was all in on Mikal Bridges, who didn't have those accolades, but I think had some of the stats and some of the fit that was way better. That would have made them better on both ends of the floor than Randle. But at some point, you've got to find a way to make the deal. And it's not going to be a deal that is going to be necessarily beneficial for your like long-term books. Like, you're going to have to eat it on someone. But, you know, at some point, you've got to make that move.
Yeah, let's finish up some of those thoughts coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Finish up the Randle thoughts, plus give you our opinions on quote-unquote missing out on Issac Okoro. Let's get to that in the last segment of LOH. My finishing thoughts on this before we move to Issac Okoro, it goes to just what kind of team do you want to be? Because I think Julius Randle coming aboard, for me, Doug, it reminds me a lot of what Chicago did. They made a few other moves to go all in for the present and not necessarily think about the future. But do you want to be Chicago? And I'm not even asking this in a rhetorical way. Do you want to be Chicago, older, like 2-3 years ago, Chicago, where you go after DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, you already have a star in Levine. We have our own star in LaMelo. So you get that 3-star lineup in the fold, and the best thing they do is get beat in the first round. I don't think they made it. Did they make it to a second round? They might have. I need to look that up. But very short amount of success. They might have got to a second round, but just 1 year, and then everything else is kaput, right? Like, how much do you value what Chicago experienced? Understanding we have not experienced a playoff experience or a playoff run in quite some time.
No, and it's what's difficult about the Chicago situation is that they are finding it so hard to unwind what they've done.
Yeah,
they can't get out. They're cats stuck in the paper bag. They can't get out. So that's a danger too. I will say I said this would hurt Brandon Miller and his development. I also think it would hurt Mark Williams in that really you would be, maybe it helps him, I don't know, but you would be exclusively asking Mark Williams to defend. Like, he needs to become Mitchell Robinson, and that you're asking him to on the offensive side really like focus on offensive rebounding, putbacks, and then on the defensive end we need you to be perfect. And be a physical rebounder too, because you're not going to get as much of that at that position because Randle's going to be focused on the offensive end of the floor. So, this season without a Randle type at that position, they're going to need something offensively from Mark Williams that we haven't seen to date. He's going to have some growth in that area if the Hornets are going to succeed. If you bring Randle on, you don't necessarily need that from him, but you're going to hope that he's going to be perfect on the defensive end of the floor.
Yeah. Bulls, by the way, did not make it to the second round. The Bulls also gave big contracts away, so it's not a perfect example, but the idea is if you wanted to extend Randle, then things get a little dicey. I would think maybe the Hornets would not go that route, but Julius Randle combo, interesting. It lasted us a long time here on this episode, Doug. I didn't expect it to almost last a full episode.
Well, we've been holding it in. This is what I'm telling you. It takes constipation. We've been waiting, and now everything's coming out at once. And so my final thing on this is that it would be super surprising for Jeff Peterson to pull off this kind of move. It would not seem to be in alignment with everything that they've done so far, where you're focused on bringing in Charles Lee, a defensive-minded coach, and getting these guys to commit to the defensive end of the floor in a way that we haven't seen in Charlotte in many years. And I think, too, every indication that I've gotten from this franchise, and they have been a little bit of a black box, as Eric Pincus was talking about, it's tough to get a read on Peterson. But everything that I see here is that this season still remains we got to see what we have in all of these players before we make a move. Because of injuries, they have not been able to really truly get an understanding of what Miles, LaMelo, Mark, Brandon, what all of that means when those players are together. And it's tough to make informed decisions on fit when you don't have that information. I think if this does happen, Walker, here's my prediction. If this ever happens for Charlotte, it's not going to be before the season starts. It's going to be because things are going seriously wrong in New York, and things for LaMelo, Brandon, and Mark are going seriously right in Charlotte. They're surprising folks. And Jeff Peterson and Schlotkin, they feel like that striking that move is going to surely accelerate them into the playoff discussion because they're almost already there. So I think this is more of an in-season idea than it is, seeing Randle suit up for training camp.
Okay, so we don't necessarily think the Hornets have missed out on Randle. Do we think they missed out on Issac Okoro? Because he was one of the more popular free agents as far as after the first or second, maybe even third wave of free agents signed with the new team. We were always looking at the scrap heap, quote unquote, no disrespect to Okoro, just trying to figure out the leftover guys. Who could we go and actually make this team better, go out and sign that makes this team better? Okoro was a frequent name. Well, he's going back to the Cleveland Cavaliers on a 3-year, about $12.5, $13 million deal. He's back with Cleveland, stalemate there between the two, and eventually they reunite here, Doug. But I found some value in Okoro. I think that the Hornets, once they made their decision to trade for Jeff Green, that was it on going after Okoro. They already got somebody with a similar... Josh Green, that's right. Did I say Jeff Green? Did I just go Georgetown on you?
Yeah, if they had traded for Jeff Green, I'd have serious questions.
Yeah, that would have been true. Josh Green. Yeah, once they made the choice to go after Josh Green, similar role, similar type player, I think that was their quote-unquote Issac Okoro, and just eventually letting him sign with another team or eventually just go back home.
Yeah, I think that move and then retaining Bridges. I think those were the moves they wanted to make, and so I don't think they missed out on Okoro here. I think they did their due diligence in exploring that type of player. So it's great to know that the general management of this team, this new regime, so far has been able to be honest about what the problems are, identify those problems, and then go to work fixing them. And whether you agree with whether they should have done Josh Green or Issac Okoro, I think we can all agree that we're glad that they didn't go with Jeff Green to fix those issues.
I was mentioning how Randle is going to be 30 in November. Jeff Green is well past 30 at this point. He's been in the league for quite some time. No, it is interesting, man. Like, you think about some of the other free agents that were, this is what Mitch Kupchak and the Hornets used to do. They used to wait all the time, and then they would have a little more money to spend on the guys that had waited a long time in free agency and still not sign them. Lauri Markkanen comes to mind. Well, hindsight, sure, but they did miss out on Lauri Markkanen after having some rumored interest in him, and then eventually he signed somewhere else. This one's a little more of a stretch. I really wanted Josh Hart for this team. I thought he did a lot of the little stuff that would make sense, and he's since bounced to a couple of different squads, New Orleans, and going, of course, to New York. But I am not looking at a free agent this go around, Doug, and thinking, man, Hornets really missed out on that guy. There was a chance. It was a perfect fit. The money was right. They really missed out on that guy. I don't have that feeling this go around, and that's a good feeling to have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so much of this is about timing and windows and opportunities, particularly for franchises that are not going to be big players in free agency. It's all about finding those wrinkles. And so, look, whatever you think about Julius Randle as a player, you can't deny some of the accolades. You can't deny some of the raw production that he's been able to put up. And this will be a difficult decision for the franchise. I think ultimately they should see what they have. I think you still owe this young core an opportunity to say, all right, what can you do together? And then once you know that, you can better make a decision. And there will be, there will be other opportunities. There will be more disgruntled stars. There will be more players that are on player options and teams that need to do what the Hornets of old needed to do previously in getting rid of Mourning and Larry Johnson, is get something for those players. Those opportunities will present themselves, and hopefully they're able to be patient enough to wait and see, like, all right, we know what we have. We know what fit looks like, because we know how these players operate together. I mean, I was just the other day trying to find some games that I could watch with LaMelo and Brandon starting and with Miles in there, and just kind of get an idea of what they look like together. And it was like I had to keep searching and like look for these games where all of these players were healthy at the same time. They just haven't had that opportunity to see that. And I think Jeff Peterson's going to be smart enough to wait and see before making any kind of big move.
The health can only be an excuse so many years in a row, but it's a legitimate excuse as to not seeing what we want to see the last couple of years. Maybe it's not a legitimate excuse as to how it dictates how you operate. 3 years in a row, now we got to make some real changes, but 2 years in a row, all right. I'll give you a third to see if health is a good thing for you this year. And then if it doesn't work out, well, then, all the poop references again.
Right. Well, it's what makes this season so exciting, because if they are healthy, this franchise has got to make evaluations very quickly. They're not going to give these guys 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, it's going to be like, what did you do this season? How did the fit look? Who's in? Who's out? I mean, this is a huge year. If they stay healthy, this is a huge year for the Hornets. I'm excited for this thing to get started. I'm excited to cover it. Daily, longest-running podcast in Charlotte Hornets history. Let's go!
Yeah, daily, baby. Well, we are back with you Monday through Friday, every single day, the Locked On Hornets podcast. Make us your first listen every single day, and make sure you check us out on YouTube or anywhere you get your pods. Apple, Spotify, again, wherever you get them. Are we finally at 7,000 subscribers on YouTube? I think we are so close. We are at 6,900, 6,990. Nice. I think something ridiculously close to 7,000. I feel like we're almost there. So whether we're there or not, subscribe to us on YouTube and also continue to listen to the Audible Medium.
If there are 4 of you listening right now that have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, get us over the hump.
I've been asking for a long time now. Yeah, also listen to us on Apple and Spotify. That helps us out as well. Subscribe anywhere you get your pods. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day.